A big thanks to Brabura by Herstone Outdoor for sponsoring this episode.
Cooking on a flat top griddle is one of the most exciting things you can do, but it presents a problem. How do you cook thick cuts of steak? And to show you how to do it, I'm going to use this delicious thick tomahawk steak. It's an absolute beauty with a good amount of meat on it, nice and thick, great amount of intermuscular fat, and that's going to make for one tasty steak if you cook it right. And on a flat top griddle, it's not that hard. If you want to cook a thick cut of steak like this, you're going to run into a problem with the flat top griddle, because the nature of the flat top griddle is that it is a hot plate. You put your food on top of it, and then slowly the heat will rise up through the food and cook it. But if you have a thick cut of meat like this, then you might run into the problem that the outside is cooked while the inside is still raw. I'm going to show you how to solve it. This is my griddle, the Brabura griddle. People might think that it's a good idea to pre-cook your steak, like put it at home in the oven and then just sear it off when your friends and family come over. But that's really no fun. And you're not grasping the full capacity of this barbecue. First thing that I'm going to do is fire it up. And then what I want to do is I want to measure the temperature. Now you only have to do that once to understand how your grill works. You can see that it's running at a 260 degrees Celsius at the lowest setting. That means that contact at surface level, which means that if I would put my steak on and let it cook, it would still go really fast. And that's why I'm going to use this, an IKEA oven tray. Yes. There is a tray and there is a rack. The rack is going to go onto the grill, and with these little latches on either side, the grill is elevated from the flat top griddle, which means we're not going to have direct contact with the cooking surface. The next thing that I'm going to do is take a wireless thermometer, stick it into my tomahawk steak, place the tomahawk steak on the grill grate and set the oven tray on top of it. Now we're heading in the right direction because we just created a convection oven on top of a flat top griddle. But there's some techniques that we still need to apply to make this steak absolutely perfect. What always works really well with steak is bell peppers and onions. And to chop up my veggies, I'm going to be using my favorite vegetable knife, the forged zebra, and it's just too easy to chop up some bell peppers. I like to peel them first, just like you peel an apple. And that's how I separate the core from what we're actually going to be using, the side. I'm chopping off the bottom and then the sides, and then this is our waste, but this still goes to my chicken as chicken feed.
Because we're Dutch, we never throw anything
No, we don't
away.
like throwing things away. Do you know how much a bell pepper actually costs? Of course, we're going to do the same thing with the red bell peppers. And while I was cutting, I started hearing my steak. Just listen. Do you hear that? That means I need to check on how well that steak is doing, because it sounds real violent and like it's really hot and going really fast. If I check my wireless thermometer, it says I'm currently have a surrounding temperature, a dome temperature under that lid of 148 degrees Celsius. So that means we actually have the right temperature to cook the steak. Look at that. That is starting to look good. It's some of the moisture that's dripping off the bone onto the grill plate that's giving it sear. But we're also getting loads of steam. Do you see that? Now I see that I have a little bit of contact, and I want to avoid that because then this part won't have any heat from the steam. So I'm just going to fabricate a little bit of elevation with some strips of aluminum foil and fold these over. Now I have a little bit more height, and the lid is actually resting on the aluminum foil and not onto the steak. Let's continue with our veggies. I'm going to slice the bell peppers up into strips. Now I got my bell peppers chopped up. I also like to add an onion. Now there's a more chefy way to do this, but this is my favorite way. And the reason that I don't like to use the chef's way of doing it is because I am a very stubborn man.
It's also a Dutch trait.
A more Dutch way is we could compromise. Like normally you would leave the tail on of the onion. That would make it easier to cut and hold it together. But I just make an incision like that and then cut it anyway. And then I chop it up, like that. And of course I'm now left with the butt of the onion that is not chopped up, but now I just go sideways. I'm gonna still have perfect results. I don't mind eating a big strip of bell pepper, but I do mind getting that big chunk of onion, and I like to just have less structure to the onion. If I look at the steak, we're now at 25 degrees Celsius on the core temperature, which means it's about time to flip. We're halfway through. That also means we gotta hurry up with our bell peppers and onion. Let's get the lid off. Time to flip this steak around. But you can see that the tomahawk steak has been cooking. Now it's time to do the same thing on the other side. While we have a dome temperature of running about 150 degrees, rather stable, let it continue to cook. Now you see what I mean with there is a technique involved. You do have to get a little bit of room, and you do need a thermometer to actually keep an eye on the temperature as well as the dome as the core temperature of the steak, just to make sure you get that perfect cooked steak. Now with this steak continuing to cook, we have plenty of time to work on our side dish. I'm going to take a stick of butter and butter up my brabura flat top griddle. I'm going to put the onions on, and as you can see, this is going super fast. The butter has turned brown in an instant. And that's why you gotta be quick to add the onions. It will take a little bit of that heat away from that grill plate that's been getting up to temperature for a long time. And now it's slowing down, and it's time to add the bell peppers. And of course, I'm gonna put on some strips of bacon just because it tastes so good. Oh, look at that. Crispy brown bacon. The bell peppers and onions are about done, so I'm moving them over to the side. I'm also moving the bacon over to the side. There's a more colder area of my flat top griddle, keeping my bacon safe there, because now we're gonna do that magical thing. That's right, I'm talking about cheese, not just any cheese. This is delicious young Gouda cheese. I'm gonna shred it, and it goes straight on top of the flat top griddle. As you can see, the cheese is starting to melt, it's starting to bubble, and this stuff is so delicious. And now I'm going to go to the bacon. Just gonna shred it up into little pieces, and that's gonna get it mixed in with the bell peppers and the onions. And then the cheese cookie is going to go on top of the bell peppers and bacon. You won't see any vegetables, but they're still in there, and you know it's going to taste good. I'm going to turn off the burners underneath, and I'm going to leave the burner under the steak on and running until that steak is fully cooked. I just got the notification that the steak reached the core temperature of 52 degrees Celsius, which means it's time to take it off and let it rest. Look at that, what a beauty. I'm gonna put this on my cutting board, wait until the temperature stops rising, then we're gonna sear it off, which means I'm gonna set it from low to high. And of course I'm gonna clean up my flat top griddle so we have a nice clean searing station. The griddle plate is now nice and hot, so it's time to put some beef tallow on the griddle, let it melt down, put the tomahawks and put the tomahawk steak on. The most important thing of getting a good crust on the tomahawk is that the beef tallow is making contact with the steak and that the whole of the surface of the steak is making contact. That's why I'm just lifting it a little bit up, pressing a little bit, because you can see that this eye just pops up out of the steak and that the rib cap is just falling down. So not everything is going to touch the griddle unless you press it, and then you end up with a crust as beautiful as this. I want to give it half a minute or so just to get back up to temperature, get that beef tallow searing hot again, and once I see that smoke point coming and see the heat, I'm gonna place the steak on and listen to that sizzle. Once I got a beautiful sear that I'm looking for, it's time to take the steak off the griddle, and we don't need to let it rest any longer. It's just straight up slicing into it. I'm gonna take my Forged Zebra deboning knife and cut along the bone, taking the meat off. There we go. Oh, look at that. That is a good looking steak. Now, of course, we gotta slice it up. We got the rib cap here, we got the eye, and of course, I'm gonna just slice it into nice thick chunks. Look at how beautiful that turned out. Absolute perfection. Beautiful eye of steak. It'll be beautiful pink in the middle, a little bit of gray on the sides, but you will always have that when heat is coming from one side. If we would have just thrown this straight up on the griddle plate, we would have had a larger gray area. So it's well worth the effort of building yourself a makeshift convection oven on your flat top griddle. That is flat top griddle steak with a delicious cheese side dish. Sprinkle on a little bit of finishing salt, and then It is all done, time to eat. Now of course you know where to find this recipe. Give it a try, use this method, and of course you now also know how to cut a bell pepper, the way I do. Do you think there are more ways, more perfect ways to cut a bell pepper?